Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the launch event of the WorkInHealth Foundation. We are now down to the final panel session for the day. Last but not least, we're looking at regulatory affairs and the skills crunch that comes with this specific aspect. And so I will introduce the moderator, Célia Cruz in Portugal, and then Célia will introduce the panel session and the other speakers. And let me just remind, final time, please use the chat section to introduce one another, to speak with the other audience members, and please use the questions tab to ask any questions you may have for the panelists. So Célia, the floor is now yours to introduce the panel session.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Claire, for this introduction. So as Claire said, my name is Célia Cruz. I'm head of regulatory affairs at Complear. I'm also part of a TOPRA of a steering group of new regulatory professionals and leading a software as medical device subgroup. And I'm also EIT Health alumni board member, where I'm also leading a set of webinars on Let's Talk Regulation. And I will have the pleasure to moderate this panel. Together we will have with us, we'll have Catarina Simões, Regulatory Affairs and Quality Director at Iberia and Italy at Medtronic. Welcome, Catarina. We'll also have Susana Vila-Real, Senior Consultant and Team Coordinator of Quality and Compliance Team at Capgemini Engineering, Portugal. And live in Paris, we'll have Aymeric Perchant, eHealth Project Director from the French Ministry of Solidarity and Health. Thank you, all of you, for being here today. Before starting this session, let me just give you some information on the topic for who is not yet so much familiarized with this issue. So there has been recent changes in the regulatory context of medical device, such as the recent introduction this year of the medical device regulation, also the in vitro diagnostics medical device regulation that is coming up next year. And these new changes were driven by the need of further increased patient safety, together with changing technologies in the healthcare fields. And these new regulations, they brought much more detailed and rigorous requirements, demanding much more consistent support from regulatory affairs professionals. And with that, it has highlighted an already existing and underlying issue in this area, that there is a significant shortage of talents and skills in regulatory affairs yet. And the demand is increasing because of this changing and of people that can understand the implications of the rapidly changing regulatory landscape, and that can help companies effectively bring new and innovative medical device products to global markets. Actually, this was one of the points raised by small companies and competent authorities in the EIT Health think tank report on readiness of MDR. But not also, even from the notified bodies that are entities that assess medium and high risk class medical devices, they have increased the number of full-time employees every year by 5% by the 8th year in a row. And this is information from a team notified body sector survey. But this is still not enough. They are still having difficulties in finding people to hire, consequently difficulty in finding people with the right competence in the field. And this is generating delays also in the certification process also. And of course, they are in stiff competition with manufacturers, with consulting companies, to hire people with previous work experience in the field, and people with talent with competitions. Actually, there was a survey from in the RAPS report from September 2021, where it says that the majority of the employees, so people that is already in the regulatory affairs field, are hired by large companies and enterprises. And also in this survey, it was referred that the top 3 professional concerns of professional regulatory professionals are keeping up to date with regulatory changes, managing professional skills development, identify appropriate sources of education and training. So skills, talent, more information are one of the big concerns of most of the stakeholders involved in this area. And is to discuss some of these challenges and to understand the skills needed in this area that we have today, this panel. And starting with my first question to Catarina. Concerning the medical device regulation requirements, what challenges did you have in your organization in Medtronic in terms of human resources, skills in the regulatory affairs area? Did Medtronic overall regulatory team grow? How were you able to retain talent, or was that also an issue?
So, Célia, thank you. Thank you for the invitation, and it's a pleasure to speak in this panel. So, regarding the medical device regulation, as you know, it has increased a lot the type of requirements that are now formalized in the regulation, that some of them were part of guidance documents or others, and now they are really stated in the regulation as the most as requirements. So it means that in terms of the regulatory job, you will need, of course, to be much aware of these requirements and able to translate them into the technical file of your device. What we've seen, so the MDR implementation in Medtronic has been a huge, let's say, project. It involved a lot of stakeholders. I believe we are organized in different operating units, and the regulatory team of each operating unit for sure has, in terms of size, increased. But on our, and most of our operating units are based in the US, let's say, but also on the EMEA side, in Europe, as the medical device regulation came into force right now, well, this year with the delays caused by the pandemic, what we are trying to assess now is that if at a country level or at a central level in EMEA, we will need more regulatory affairs professionals. For sure, the medical device regulation implementation also meant that notified bodies had to increase their workforce, because you have to be accredited within the medical device regulation. You have more requirements to meet, and hence you see that the regulatory affairs professionals, the experienced ones, are being, let's say, well, there's a demand for them in several, by several, let's say, different types of employees, not only the companies that have to prepare technical files and put devices in the market, but also the notified bodies that will assess these technical files, but also the competent authorities that will also be part of the system and surveilling the notified bodies and the companies. So indeed, yes, I think there's a demand, a higher demand for regulatory affairs professionals and professionals with capabilities and skills that are hugely technical, because these professionals will need to understand devices themselves, or at least have a good, solid technical basis, but also keep up to date with the regulations and also the interpretation of the regulations, right? This MDR has been published already a few years ago, and now that we are implementing and the date of application has come into force, a lot of the requirements in the regulations are being, let's say, tested and implemented, and so also the interpretation levels are starting to be well, to be known and to be seen. So that's, I guess, the skills that I would say that the regulatory professional needs right now is a lot of technical skills on one sense, but on the other hand also some flexibility to understand regulations and to understand the scope of regulations we have, but some flexibility as well to understand interpretations and the changing of these regulations as they appear. So Célia,
thank you so much, Catarina. So Susana, I'm aware and I understand that Capgemini Engineering focus on accelerating technological change by creating a need to deliver software as medical device solutions. Within this field of developing medical device software, the medical device regulation requirements increased as most medical device software now were up-classified, needing to be assessed by a notified body. And with that, there is much more work for regulatory affairs professionals in the field. So what are the challenges that Capgemini Engineering's focus, and how do you tackle this within Capgemini, how to get resources with knowledge within this area, how to retain talent within this area?
I think you're on mute, so Susana. We cannot hear.
Sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. I was saying thank you for the invitation to this panel and the possibility to be talking about regulatory affairs and the challenges that has been posed in the last few years. It's really a pleasure to be here. To answer your question, Célia, it's really been challenging. As you said, software as medical device was not considered on the regulation before explicitly as it is now, and has increased a lot the regulatory aspects and the needs of documentation and the evaluation that is need to be performed. Yes, it's challenging to have resources with know-how in this area, but as Catarina said, I totally agree with her that mainly we need to have people that is able to understand legislation and it has some knowledge to tackle and understand what is the main topics and what are the key points that we need to implement and focus. But also we need to be bold and daring to overcome the issues that poses, because we are working with very new technology that changes a lot, and the requirements are constantly being different, and many times we are working on very new technology with very new systems that we don't know if we are how to context them, and this is where we need to have people that have overview and can build a structure where we can put this new technology and how this can have a road to access to the market, and implement quality management systems and procedures and build documentation that aligns with the current regulatory structure that we have, the regulatory framework that we have now for European Union and also for other countries and for FDA, etc. Also, what we do, since we work with multidisciplinary teams of software developers, testers, risk manager, we try to build a structure and also implement these regulatory requirements up front as soon as we start the development. So documentation is built according to the requirements of the medical devices legislation, and have a quality management system in place that allows the quicker access to market as possible. So I think it's important to not only have specialized regulatory affairs resources, but the resources that we have can capacitate others to work and develop their expertise in a regulatory requirement that is needed. This is often some difficult to software developers and testers that are not used to work in this regulated field. So it's very important to have this implementation and to have it right up front.
Thank you, Susana. So I resume your intervention with be bold and dare overcoming the challenges and capacitate others to develop expertise. I think these are great snippets of what you mentioned. Now going to Paris, Aymeric, the lack of people with knowledge in medical device software, maybe focusing a little bit on this area, and especially for small companies, which are typically the ones that are more innovative and bring more innovation, this can be limitative for the industry development, as they are struggling to comply with the regulations, struggling to find talent that can support them. What are your thoughts on that, and how can we tackle that as we push for digital health and we push for innovation in this sector? What kind of skills do you see missing here?
Thank you for the question. There's, I think there's two different aspects to the problem. There's a short-term issue and the long-term one. I'll begin with the long-term one. We're currently investing 80 million euros in higher education of people to train them on all the aspects of digital health. The 5 pillars we're investing in are cybersecurity, regulatory, of course, and this is a subject we want to tackle here. All the communication with patient, all the telehealth, and all the tools that will be needed. So we want to train 40,000 people in the upcoming 5 years. Sorry, 200,000. And so this will be a huge step forward for the awareness of this sector. But today, with the new regulations that were, and you remind us of that, they were necessary because there was a gap with our regulation. It was necessary for the safety of patients, and we have to remember that it's not something you have to overcome. The regulations, they're here to help the sector, and you have to leverage on this. That said, there's 3 different targets here. We have what I will call doers, helpers, and controllers. Controllers are the notified bodies, and they should have the higher experience, and it's difficult for them to attract those people. Helpers are the consultant and other experts, and doers. The doers are the technical teams, but also the quality management and the regulatory. Here you have to find the skills where they are, and you have to fill the gap between the skills people have and what they should have. So it means training, it means continuous training, and we're also investing on that. The basic and the common ground we should work on are all the necessary skills. So it's the one I mentioned before, the 5 pillars, and we have to bring this awareness as large as possible to people in the industry, but also people in the public sector who can find time to help the industry. So here I'm thinking of research engineer, but also clinicians in a public institution who can help a lot on the clinical aspect of the clinical trials, the designs. And I think there's many resources here to be found, to be attracted. So it's an HR problem also. It's communication and HR problem on the short term, and we have to use this. And we are currently working on a public plan to bring this awareness to those institutions. We're not yet ready to present the details here, so this is a bit of a teaser I'm doing here, and I'm so sorry about the timing, but we'll talk about it a bit later, because we want really to tackle this problem, and we are really well aware. It will also be a subject of the French presidency of the European Union, all the key electronic health and digital in health, and in particular how to tackle the notified bodies problem on the short terms and on the long terms too.
Thank you so much, Aymeric. Good to know that France is tackling this, and it is putting a lot of resources on this training and having more skills in people and acquire new talent in this area. Maybe a second question for you. Is this focused on new talent or new people? I'm not sure if you are able to disclose that right now, or are you also working on reskilling as they're even older? I mean, people in regulatory affairs that has already some experience, they may need some more skills. Also, people that want to change from another sector may want to gain more skills. Would this kind of training be also supported to them? And also, what would be your recommendation to the WorkInHealth Foundation on how to support also this need, not only as a French level, but as a more European level?
Yes, of course, the continuous education is really, really important, because on this sector, it's difficult to be young on this sector, because you have to consider many options, to have experience, to have hands-on experience, even though, so you can't come out of an engineering school and be a consultant in regulatory. This is a bit weird, I know. You can find them, but you have to know how to tackle this problem and how to interpret the spirit of the regulations. And the spirit was the one you mentioned before. It's for the patient's safety and for the efficiency of the health. So you have to interpret for many things. So you have to reskill already professionals that are close to the sector, either in the health sector or in other sector. By the way, I think the software norm, the 62304 norm, was based on avionics 40 years ago. So you can also attract people from other sectors, because software development is rather close, and everything that is in this norm, in the regulation, are good practices. Only the vocabulary is a bit weird to those people. I know, as a former developer myself, but it's really, there's this attractivity, and we have to make it public and to bring this awareness, so we can attract other professionals, maybe in sectors where there's not this level of acceleration, and this really really important. So continuous education can be done by university, public schools, but also private entities, and we're currently working with private entities who can bring those skill sets to people. Also, I think we should encourage all the in-house mobility to train current developers who dislike profoundly the quality, and to make them understand how they can improve, their work on a day-to-day basis. Because in terms of quality and regulatory, you have people with in a regulatory department, but quality also depends a lot on people that are in the teams. You mentioned testing. You have to have separate teams to make the testing, but you can also have a rolling a mechanism to test. So there's a lot of different aspects we can leverage on, but the first one is the training, the initial training, education, and higher education, and also continuous training.
Thank you so much. Coming from, and as we have been talking on software development, maybe another question for you, Susana. You already mentioning that you have the developers, you have the regulatory affairs and quality managers, and they have to have a structure and capacitate others to develop expertise and knowledge. How do you integrate teams, or what kind of suggestions and tips do you give for other companies that want to further integrate their teams, and what kind of profiles and skills are needed for this type of teams? Is more capacitate people from software development into regulatory affairs, or regulatory affairs into software development, both? Could you give us some tips on this so that all of us can learn from Capgemini experience?
Yes, of course. Thank you for your question. I think I agree with Aymeric. We are aligned on the training and the importance of these multidisciplinary teams. I think it's really important to have multidisciplinary teams and to have a cross development where people from quality that are more involved with quality management and also regulatory affairs professionals need to be part of these teams. And when we are involved in this in these projects of software development, there's a culture that we from regulatory affairs and have a background more from chemical pharmaceutical industry, or even from medical devices industry. Maybe we are not so familiarized with the software development, so that's a learning point for us. We need to understand how they communicate, how they develop, why they perform actions as they do, because sometimes it's not of our current knowledge. This doesn't come in the legislation. It's another area. I'm sure that Aymeric faced these challenges. Being a developer coming to regulatory affairs, he also had to learn this new culture, understand how to interpret the legislation. And what I think and what we do in Capgemini is it is important to have different roles and different perspectives, and we need to learn from each other, learn with developers how to develop a software, what is the procedure, what is the life cycle of a software, and in the same way we capacitate these professionals with medical devices legislation. What is a medical device? Coming from the early start, what is a medical device? What is a software as medical device? why this software is different from other softwares that they have developed before. What are the constraints, and what is the importance to the people that are going to use them, what may be risks, and what are the opportunities. We also include always in our teams risk manager, someone that identifies potential risks that can come with the development. And we capacitate our teams to produce documentation, quality documentation during the development that is and documentation that is responding to the requirements of the legislation for the development of software and medical device. So to sum up, it's important not to, we as regulatory professionals, completely go to the other side and start developing software, and also the other way around. I think we need each other's knowledge and experiences, and this is what is going to contribute to the good production and development of good software and products that really impact people's lives and going to make a difference. Software that is safe and is going to be widely used like medicines that we have nowadays.
Thank you, Susana. Maybe just one last question before the Q&A, Catarina. You mentioned before that people from regulatory affairs need to know how to interpret regulations. So that's one of the skills that regulatory affairs need to have. What other skills do you think is important, and what type of profile do you think it's crucial within the regulatory affairs, and even how to make this area more attractive for more people to come into this area?
Thank you, Célia. And I'll start with the last part of your question, which was, I think this profession has a marketing problem. I think we need to market this profession more, regulatory affairs, because it is seen as very, let's say, technical and methodical and very, let's say, niche profession, but actually I believe it's a profession in which you'll have to be a partner with the different stakeholders, as my fellow panelists have mentioned, and being the bridge to be able to identify what are the requirements and being able to translate your product's characteristics and to fit the existing requirements in the name of patient safety, and to be able to bring the product to the market. So actually it's a very, very interesting job, and I think it's not known to professionals. Of course, I finished university a long time ago already, but I remember that it was not a regulatory affairs was not a function that I knew what it meant. And I guess that a lot of people with a scientific background would actually like this type of job, because it means to create a summary of the technical characteristics of your product, but being able not only to interpret regulations, but being able to build a technical file in the case of medical devices that is solid and that can bring this product to the market. So actually, I think we have a marketing problem, answering your second question, right? So we should market this profession more, because it could be a very nice career for people with a scientific background. And then you asked me also what are the skill sets that people need to have. And I guess one of them, of course, is to be methodic, to have a scientific background, to understand regulations and being able to interpret these. But as I'll add to what Susana said, you need to be able really to partner with your stakeholders, not only internally with the different functions, but also externally with your notified body or the competent authorities. So you need to be able to do a lot of interpretation in both ways, right? Being able to connect to your stakeholders and understand what is the best way forward to bring your product to the market. So yeah, my answer is market the profession. So create awareness around it. It's a very interesting job for scientific minds, and I think the rest of the skill set needs to be a very diverse skill set, methodic, science-based, but also with a touch of, let's say, interpersonal skills that allow you to get the best solution.
Thank you so much, Catarina. I completely agree. There is a marketing issue. This career, at least to me, is quite exciting. So many new challenges, new technologies that we work with. Of course, there's some more methodic work, but there's a lot of exciting parts that maybe are not so well marketed about. Claire, I don't know if there are some questions from the audience.
Yes, we do have questions from the audience. So there's maybe one for you, Célia, because maybe at the crossroads in the work you do for TOPRA. So what about expertise in MDR-related clinical research? Are in-house experts easily available, or are companies looking for more external expertise, such as academic centers, CROs, to get input in this area?
Well, so it will, one of the favorite answers from regulatory affairs people, it depends. Well, first it depends also on the capacity of what the company that we are talking about. Is it a small company? Is it a large company? For sure, a large company, it needs to have someone inside, and depending on what is the device about and what's the risk class of the device, and as higher the risk, the more the need to have more in-house expertise in this area. Of course, the thing is, it's impossible to have experience in everything. It's impossible to have connections to every clinics, to every research centers, and to have experience in writing the clinical plan and writing all the technical documentation needed on this regard. So there may be different kinds of skill sets, and in that sense, sometimes outsourcing these to consultants or to CROs that have this technical expertise can be an important point. So it will really depends. In terms of education in this area, I mean, there's a lot of learning that needs to be done. I mean, even the regulation is new, and there were some numbers on these that, for example, for a notified body to have someone experienced within the clinical evaluation field, they said that they were taking 18 to 25 months just to train them in-house. So as you can imagine, it's a quite long training that you need to have all the skill sets needed. So it's a field with quite a lot of demand and specialization that still needs to be worked on.
A lot of collaboration from what I hear from all of you.
Yes.
We don't have other questions, and I think the time is up. I don't know, Célia, if you have any concluding remarks on this panel session.
I just want to thank you so much for our panelists. I think it was a great discussion on this field. I hope we could convince also some people that this area is exciting. There's a lot of demand. There is a lot of work to be done, and the mix between science or engineering and some kind of law and interpretation, and a lot of critical thinking that is somewhat exciting. So I hope that more people can join this area, because there's a lot of talent needed. And that's it. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, and also for the invitation, also Claire.
Célia, and let me restate thank you to the panelists. So thank you to Aymeric, who I was sharing the stage with, even if you don't see us together on the same screen. Thank you to Catarina, and thank you to Susana. Thank you, Célia.